Hello, everybody. Welcome to Vinyl Fridays, the only music review show where I attempt to record 30 episodes of it all in one sitting and stagger their releases for 30 weeks. Today I'm going to be talking about the record Flood Network by Katy Day. That's Katy with an I-E and Day with an E-Y. This is an album that came out last year, 2016, that I completely missed during the year. I made a video about my favorite albums from 2016. I had gone way out of my way to listen to everything that was critically acclaimed, everything that was on anyone's best of lists. I had asked Twitter for people to tell me their favorite albums. I went so far out of my way trying to look for music I would like from 2016. And I found very little. And then in the comments of the video about the best albums of the year, someone said, "Hey, you should check out Flood Network by Katy Day. It sounds kind of like Clarence Clarity, but more like folksy, I guess." And I was like, "Well, that sounds like my kind of thing." And I listened to it, and it immediately became like my third favorite album of 2016. This is a fantastic album, and the comparison to Clarence Clarity is warranted. I'm going to show you the disc here because it looks really cool. This, it's like a colorful splash of pink. There's actually 3 different versions of this vinyl that were for sale on the record label site, like 3 different kinds of color splash vinyl, depending on which color is most to your aesthetic, I guess. The whole album is definitely to my aesthetic. This whole release, everything about it. I love the overall look of this and what I assume is Katy Day here on the front. Never heard of her, never heard of this album, nobody talked about it. But it's this very odd experimental short album I think it's only like 35 minutes long or something like that. In spite of the fact that it's nearly in fact it might be more than 20 tracks, something like 22. But the reason for that is that half of them are like 2.5 to 3 minute songs, and the other half are interludes. Every song has an interlude between it, and each track flows into the previous one. So basically, you'll have a song that's kind of these weird little experimental pop rock songs, I guess. I really don't even know what genre I'd classify this as. It definitely doesn't sound like anything else I've heard. I mean, you can tell there's influence from stuff like shoegaze and experimental rock musicians and pop. There's a mixture of some guitars in there, electronic sounds, some glitch stuff. It's just got all kinds of different like genres fused into each other, but all to create this very lighthearted and upbeat, but very shy and mysterious and guarded kind of tone. The album feels like it has a lot of secrets, sort of. The vocals, it's like multi-layered female vocals, but they're all very distorted and kind of pushed into the background behind the music, and you can't really understand them most of the time. There's no lyrics offered on the website. So the whole thing has this feeling of being like veiled and guarded about its emotions which are very complicated and not readily apparent in the music. Other than that they literally sound like they're trying to be withheld. So, you know, it could be somewhat of a challenging listen, I guess, for some audiences probably, but I just find it really interesting. But each song will have an interlude in between them that sort of shifts from one sound to the next. So like after the first track, there'll be an interlude that starts off sounding like that song and then starts to sound like the next song, and then that song starts. So if you cut out all the interludes, you would get just a 12-track album of just a bunch of, you know, good little short songs. But if you leave in the interludes, it kind of makes the whole album into one long track. And it flows so well that I listened to this like several times before I even could figure out like where each song begins and ends. Like I really didn't know how much of the album was songs that have transitions in the song itself, because some of them change pretty wildly over the course of even a short song, and which ones were changing because of the transitions between. So yeah, it's an album that really lets you explore it. In spite of how short it is, it still feels pretty mysterious, and I really like that. When I get into a new album, I love the feeling of not knowing what to expect, or like, even though I'm listening to the album over and over again, it still holds all these new surprises that I don't, that I'm like, wait, was that there before, And this has that kind of feeling. It definitely is comparable to Clarence Clarity's Know Now. If you liked that album, you should absolutely give this one a shot. It's a lot less like muscular or immediate than that album, whereas Clarence Clarity is very like in your face and loud. His songs are bombastic and intense. These are all much more reserved, minor, like everything tries to sort of blend into the background. There's a sort of sense of flow to it, like no one moment stands out and punches you in the face, even though individually all the songs are really strong. All of them are interesting and fun and cutesy kind of in a way, but not in like a cloying way. It's like kind of, it's cute, but not in a way that's like evident. It's more like pleasant, I guess is the word I'd use. And there's lots of just interesting sounds in here, like that you wouldn't get anywhere else. As it goes along, it also kind of transforms, where the early songs are more experimental and like glitchy and stuff, and then it gets into more like pop rock kind of songs in the middle, and then at the very end, it's like full-blown shoegazy ambient drone almost. And I will say the last couple tracks on there are not my favorite. Like the last few songs where it goes into more the ambient direction just feel more standard. Like they feel more like just any like interchangeable ambient drone kind of song. They're just like glistening sort of like 3-minute tracks which is longer than most of the songs on the album. Like those last few kind of make up a lot of runtime compared to how many tracks they are, whereas most of it is just this exploration of just these wildly different sounds. It's an exciting record, and I don't dislike those last few songs. I just don't find them quite as interesting as some of the early tracks that really sound like nothing I've ever heard before. And I would love to try to parse more of the lyrics, because of the ones I can make out, like the very first lines on the album are, I don't want to be big, I want to be small. I don't want to be medium-sized, and then I can't understand past that. There's one part where she seems to say, there's a hole in my heart, or there's a hole in my head. Like, there's just lots of these sort of odd, esoteric lyrics that really add to the atmosphere, even though I can't really understand like what the songs are about. I get the feeling of it. Like, the idea of I don't want to be big while listening to these very guarded and shy songs that are kind of, trying to pull themselves into the background and not, like trying to withhold so much information. It feels like, yeah, that is exactly the feeling of wanting to be small and not big, So I find that really interesting and entertaining. I haven't spent, a massive amount of time with this record yet. I just discovered it last month, and so it's not like I can really plumb its depths and get super analytical about it, but I really enjoyed it. I definitely would consider it my third favorite album of last year, which was like a mediocre year for music for me until I, discovered stuff like this that I just totally missed out on. I had to make a video about this because it's driving me crazy that I've never seen anyone talk about it. Fantano didn't cover it. I never saw any reviews for it, and maybe people noticed it and just weren't that into it. Like maybe it just wasn't very popular. Maybe the people who heard it weren't impressed. I was impressed though, and so, I encourage you to give it a shot. And that's it. See you next week for more Vinyl Fridays. I'm going to go through as much of this rack as I can.